And we're live. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hello. Good afternoon, Amaterasu Solar. Good morning
You
to
do
me.
you do a pretty good job of pronouncing that. It's
uh,
I'm Amaterasu Solar.
Amaterasu
I know.
Solar. And
There you go.
Amaterasu,
That's getting much closer.
yeah. And you are one of the hosts on Conspiracy or Not, Here We Come, which is on currently on the Rufus Cat channel. Could you
Well, actually, he got a couple of strikes,
he
so
did?
he can't do it. Yeah, oh yeah, we've been doing it on either my Amaterasu Solar Again channel or on Bart's channel.
Oh wow. And could you give
Yeah,
us
so
a, could you give us a quick rundown on what that show is all about? I've been on it a couple times. I found it very interesting. Could you give us your rundown on it, please?
well, basically, we invite people to come discuss their perspectives and anything that is an interesting perspective is welcome. It is called Conspiracy or Not, so it may or may not include conspiracy items, but we do have a slight focus on conspiracy, uh, mainly because from what we all gather, there is definitely a group, probably well hidden, that is in charge, or not in charge, but in control of, shall we say, our planet here.
Yeah. And could you also give us a quick rundown on the origin of your name and why you chose your name, because it is very interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, a
Yeah.
friend of mine suggested that I use Amaterasu. He liked the name, and I liked the name, being as Amaterasu is the Shinto goddess of the sun, and I like that quite a bit. And so I started using it back when everybody was pretty much anonymous on the web. And that was my chosen name. And then one day I was filling out some forms trying to contact somebody on the web, and it would not let me get past the last name option. And Solar just popped into my head. And so I went, what the heck? We've got the goddess of the sun, and we have Solar, which is related to the sun. And so I typed that in, and I've been Amaterasu Solar ever since.
That reminds me a bit of some people say Solomon is solar written three times. Sol on. Don't know if you've heard about that.
Well, I've heard Sol, uh, Moon, sun and moon.
Ah,
That,
that's even
that's
well.
what.
That's even better. Sol
Yeah.
on.
Yes, sun and
I
moon.
like that. Amun, I think, is the rising sun. Or I don't know
Yeah.
what that is in Egyptian.
Yeah, who
Now,
knows? I haven't studied that well enough.
on your own channel, you cover a great variety of topics. One of the overriding themes is that you like to talk about how they are in control and directing us and all this. And
Mhm.
I think today you'd like to talk about how how what are the mechanisms that we're all being controlled, and I'd really like to get into. So do you want to kick off with that?
Okay, well, as far as the mechanism, there's really one that is at the foundation of their control, and that is the use of money, which, when you start really looking at what money is, it's an accounting for the human energy that each of us plugs into the system that accounts for our human energy added. And it also has the glorious element that it moves the bulk of our planet's wealth to very few. And given that these very few are not going out and making humanity healthier, happier, and more joyous, and instead seem to be toying with us, we have to conclude that these ones to whom the wealth is flowing are psychopaths, because a non psychopath would care that people were suffering and struggling and so on. But a psychopath would not. Ergo, we have psychopaths in control on our planet. The reason that money is a mechanism for control is that not produce something and exchange it, whether we're talking trade, barter, work exchange, shells, beads, sticks notched and split, coins or metals, bills or electronic bits. If you're not doing that, it is real planet.
Sorry, could you
And
repeat that last bit?
so you have
You were just breaking up a little bit.
how far back?
Just the last sentence.
Well, I said if we have oh, gee, I was on a roll and you just knocked me right off.
Sorry. We can
Okay.
all
I basically, I think I was saying that regardless of what it is that you're using to account for the human energy, you need to have it in a system where it's in order to survive and hopefully survive comfortably. And it is through the ability to withhold that the power comes to be, because then people want it and are willing to do things that are not ethical to get it. Whether it's because the person is desperate and needs the money, or whether it's because people are psychopathic and, hey, money, cool. I'll do that for, a buck or whatever. So, this is their foundational mechanism, and it affords them the strong arms, the toadies, the strong arms in the armies. Because without accounting for our energy, there'd be no paying of armies, no paying others to do dirty work for us, which is basically what the psychopaths in control do. So you have money that gives them this power. And since it's just accounting for energy, and since it arose in a scarcity paradigm where human energy compared to what people wanted done was scarce, and you needed people to do things they didn't want to do, it makes sense that this exchange came forth out of whatever was going on. Now, there are two schools of thought on that. Some people say it just naturally evolved, and that's why we have it. But there are others who say that there are those who introduced it to our planet. And I have to give, if not by a huge margin, the highest probability to the latter. I think that it was something that was foisted on human beings upon this planet, specifically for the control mechanism.
That's fascinating. It sounds like you're saying there's something possibly even higher than humans, which is behind what has imposed this particular monetary system upon us.
Well, I don't know that I would call it higher per se. Certainly, I feel that there is a good probability that we're dealing with something that is not human. It could be, I suspect it's ET. There are people who blame demons or interdimensional beings and so on and so forth. But I don't really need to get into metaphysical and twisted physics to explain what I see. You know, if we have ET, and there's certainly an awful lot of written evidence that strongly suggests that ET came to this planet from somewhere else. I suspect that that it's ET that initiated the systems that we now see instituted on our planet. And I strongly suspect that ET is not particularly empathic or caring. In fact, given the observable results, I have to say that we have psychopathic ET.
This is amazing, because I've always because they always talk about human nature, and they say, "Oh, human nature is running the system, and human nature is bad." And you're giving it a whole new perspective of a non-human intelligence, which is running the whole situation.
I have to give it that strongly because of the, I've been studying the gematria of things. And when you start looking at the probabilities that a specific number would show up through a number of different directions on the exact same event, and it has a connection to things like sacrifice and eclipse and so on and so forth, you begin to say this cannot be random. And it's been, when you go back and check things for centuries, you find these same things that show up in the events that we are told took place. And so you say somebody has computing power a lot greater than what we had up until very recently that is running the show. So yeah, to me, human nature is exactly opposite of what they tell us. Human nature, as a rule, 9% of us are genetically psychopathic. About 1% of us across the board in all, quote unquote, and so on, 1% are genetic, and they are the ones top of the power. Those people at the top are psychopaths. Yeah, they're the ones that are getting all the money. But there would have to be something behind that. And my reasoning is because there seems to be a generational plan that has been going on this planet for many, many generations. And if you take your average psychopath, they would not care at all what happened after they died because it does not serve them. Psychopaths only care about what serves them. But if there is something behind them that is saying, if you do this, I will give you that. Do this, and I will give you that. So that this is keeping the plan on track. If there wasn't anything holding that plan together, I cannot see how it would persist over generations.
I think that's incredibly insightful. That the
Thank you.
1% of psychopaths seem to be representing what we define as a human nature driven system.
Yep.
And it's incredibly insightful because psychopaths are in the DSM and other textbooks as a kind of deviant, insidious intelligence, and yet they have sculpted the global system which we are a part of.
Yes, indeed. In fact, they do all these ghastly things like, pollute, uh, do planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is what's creating the vast bulk of waste on our planet. But they'd rather make money than take care of the planet. That's rather psychopathic in my book.
Well, it is. It's quite interesting as well.
So they do all these things and they blame humanity for it. And then we get this picture that, oh, I'm okay. I'm a good person, but everybody else is horrible. Because that's human nature. And it's not. Most of us are good, well, there's a lot of us who are secondary psychopaths where the psychopathy of the society kind of rubs off on them. They discovered that it's easier to turn off the feelings of caring and love and empathy and compassion. And that is to be expected in a society run by psychopaths. But if that was taken away and we were run by the caring ones, if the caring ones were taking care of things on our planet, there'd be little to no secondary psychopathy. And what few psychopaths there are, if they decide to do something unethical, the rest of us could pretty well handle the problem that they are creating. Because, humans are generally speaking very good people, but they've been made fearful, untrusting, sour on humanity through the indoctrination and propaganda that they have received from the ones who have a vested interest in people thinking that's how humans naturally are.
Now, do you think that this is imposed on us by some kind of magnetic field, such as the sun, or a David Icke type situation? Like, apparently, like he says, Saturn is evil, or the moon is artificial, or is it, as you say, like possibly ET? And if it is ET, is it an ET intelligence which is broadcast to the Earth? Maybe a kind of C.S. Lewis type situation. I know you're into science fiction. C.S. Lewis, I think he held that the Earth was ruled by Satan, and that Satan, in one of his books, I think Perelandra or one of those, he says that the satanic influence was trying to get onto Venus, onto virginal Venus, and that had to be opposed. Or did ET come and hybridize with a certain amount of population, say the Nephilim, and are they the psychopaths?
That it's a good question. I don't know. I give very high probability to the human race having been genetically engineered, much as the Sumerian tablets seem to suggest. Some of my clues are that, well, the big clue is in the number of genetic diseases that are passed on. When you look in nature, most species, virtually all, between 0 and about 20 that they can pass on. And lo and behold, over 4,000. Now, I'm not seeing how that would happen without some interference. But the broadcast, I don't think so. I don't think that it's not necessary to explain what I see. I see people with a lot of money who control the media, who control the military, who control the court systems, who control the education systems, who control the medical systems, who control the communication systems. I mean, basically, they've got their little sticky fingers in every single pie. And, they present things to us on the media that when you start examining the details, you realize there's no way they could be telling us the real story here.
Yeah.
So, you arrive at the awareness that everything that they're putting out there has uh, some kind of agenda behind it. Uh, whether it's in, the school system is not to teach, it's not to educate, it is to output good order takers,
That's so
good
interesting.
good workers, not critical thinkers, not ones capable of logic and reasoning.
Sounds like a perfect dystopian
Oh,
sci-fi
it
place
is.
society.
It
It is.
is.
It is.
We are living it. Yes, we are.
That's amazing. Okay, uh, Amaterasu. Well, I think we can wrap it up there, and thank you so much
Oh, okay, you're very welcome.
for being
And
my first interviewee. And
hey, we can talk anytime you want.
awesome, thank you. And I'm sure we will. Okay, and you're and how can YouTubers locate your channel?
Okay, well, my channel is Amaterasu Solar. I have a backup channel, Amaterasu Solar again. And just typing in a search for Amaterasu Solar will bring up both channels. And you can either watch one or the other or both. Doesn't matter.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Amaterasu, and have a wonderful afternoon, the rest of your day, and thanks for being on the Charles Cost Show.
Oh, hey, my pleasure. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Uh,
Okay. Hey, I'm just wondering. We can do another interview if you want.
well, we can go on. I could go on forever.
Yeah. Well, I think we should. While we're connected.
All right.
Do you want to have a break, have a drink or something, or?
Yeah, maybe a wee bit of nicotine.
Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. Okay.
So
Let's leave this up, and I'll catch you back here in 5 minutes.
sounds like a
10 minutes.
plan.
Okay. Okay. Let's do it. Okay. I'll have a drink. All right.
All
Awesome.
right.
Okay.
Well, I is back. I don't take that long.
Hello.
I'm
Hello.
here.
That was a quick ciggy.
Yeah, I only smoke like between a half and a third in
Oh, cool. That's a good
cigarettes.
idea. Yeah,
So
that's like
yeah, I go through about 5 to 6 cigarettes a day.
oh, cool. Awesome. Awesome. That's a different way of doing it. Well, why not? That's better. That's better. So what do you reckon? That was awesome. Did you like it?
Yeah, I loved it. I
I
loved
loved it
it.
too. Yeah, I can tell. Yeah, awesome, awesome. Now, what do you think we should talk about in the next interview?
Well, that's a good question. We could,
What are you really into?
huh?
What are you really into?
That about the only thing that I'm really into is solving for the psychopaths in control on our planet.
uh,
That is what my work, my life's work is all
yeah.
about.
Hmm. Uh,
By the way, you can call me Amy, you know.
Amy. Okay, I'll call you Amy. All right,
It's a
Amy.
lot easier to say than Amaterasu.
It's a lot less Japanese as well, isn't it?
Yes.
You're not Japanese.
Well,
uh,
no, I'm not Japanese, but I adore the Japanese culture.
ah,
I think it's awesome.
yeah, it's interesting. You know, they say this the Shinto sun religion is it a sun religion?
Well, it has a sun goddess,
Because
which is unusual. Usually the sun is the the god and the moon is the goddess, but in Shinto you have the sun goddess and the moon god. Moon goddess,
oh,
sun god and the moon goddess. There we go. I knew I'd get
that's
that out right.
that's opposite.
So, yeah.
Would you like to talk about some kind of maybe like some kind of maybe even about sci-fi because you're into sci-fi?
Well, it's been a long time since I
Oh, a long
really
time.
got.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I did initially, but then once I began seeing, I could talk about what my experience with my father and T. Townsend Brown. Do you know anything about T. Townsend Brown?
What's that?
He was an inventor, a researcher, back in the starting in the late 40s and moving on up to I think it was in the 70s that he passed away. I don't remember for sure when he passed, but he uh he did some experiments
Ooh.
where he put something. It had a two electrodes, positive and negative, and in between a dielectric. And he ran high voltage through the unit, and while it was sitting on a scale, and he discovered that when the positive plate was upwards, the unit seemed to lose weight, and when he flipped it over so the positive plate was on the downward end, it seemed to gain weight.
Oh my God, let's talk about
And
this.
and and he's like, well, he didn't know what was going on, but he called the this effect the Biefeld Brown effect.
Oh, he came up
And
with that.
after doing a lot of huh?
Your father came up with that.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Your father came up with that.
No, no, no. T. Townsend Brown
Oh,
did.
T. Townsend Brown.
My father worked with T. Townsend Brown.
Ah,
He was
awesome.
one of the helpers, okay? And he
Awesome.
would come home and basically what was the original setup wasn't really good for creating gravity control because it had equivalent electrodes and a linear dielectric. But after doing experiments and things, they discovered that the best setup was a very tiny negative electrode and a very big positive electrode, like sort of like an umbrella, and a nonlinear dielectric in between. And the higher the K value of the dielectric, the more the effect was seen. And they got to the point where they were uh, uh, moving saucers around by positive electrode at the front, negative at the back, high voltage through this disc, and they could spin it around very, very, very fast without very much energy.
That's amazing.
And
Let's get right into it. Let's record it so you don't have to say everything twice.
I'm recording.
Oh,
Still.
awesome, awesome, awesome. Ah, okay. All right, keep going, keep going.
Okay. So at any rate, they also did some experiments in France where they ran these discs in a vacuum and discovered that they got even more power in the vacuum than they did in air, which tells us right there that we are not, as Wikipedia will tell you, talking about ion wind. Okay. They try to pass off the behavior, the electrogravitic behaviors. That's what they called this study, was electrogravitics, because it basically the positive field and the positive electrode and the negative electrode with the high voltage across would create a gravity bubble. And everything in that gravity bubble would fall towards the positive end. But the positive end kept moving forward, and so it kept falling. They also discovered that they could get more energy out than they put in. And this, they decided, had to do with the fact that it was drawing energy from the ether, the pool of energy that we swim in. And so they had both gravity control and they had free energy. I mean, what more could you want? And then in my dad would come home and tell us all about what they were getting in their experiments. And that's how I know about it. And, he would explain to me what the world was going to look like when I grew up. Cities would float, cars would fly, and we would have all the energy we could possibly use. Well, in mid-1959, my dad came home to tell me that we couldn't talk about his work anymore. And he said, and I'm going to quote him now, "They want it secret for now," unquote. So I know that it's been in black projects for getting close to 60 years.
Wow.
And to be sure, they have had many advances. And this is one reason why I think that the largest portion of these UFOs that everyone is seeing are human-made. I think that they are part of the black projects playing around. And of course, they have their, oh, it's ET to fall back on if anybody is saying, hey, look.
Could you tell us, did your dad give any indication of how big this setup was? Like what size the experiment was? How big the equipment was?
Well, the discs were about 3 feet in diameter as far as those particular tests that they ran. Put one on either end of a beam, and, spin around. They, at the center, it'd spin around, and they were getting, I think, in like 700 miles an hour, and they weren't putting all that much energy in.
Wow.
So,
And can you also just
yeah.
give us a rundown on what you know about T. Townsend Brown, and also please tell us how your father came to be employed by him, and how long their relationship lasted.
Okay. Well, I know that I met T. Townsend Brown when I was probably around 5. And he reached out to shake my hand, and he was missing a finger. And at that age, his center finger had been cut off in an experiment that he had done many years before. And I remember being just, I mean, I freaked out because at 5 years old, I had never seen or heard of anybody missing pieces. And I remember throwing a conniption and my mom being all embarrassed by my behavior. But at any rate, what happened was T. Townsend Brown connected with the owner of the company that my dad was working for. My dad was an aerospace engineer. And through that connection, they brought my dad in on that project with Brown that they had decided that they were going to do. And dad would go to work and come home, and like I said, one time he brought his boss by.
Oh wow.
And that's when I freaked out. But I don't know a great deal about him except that he lived on Catalina Island, and I know my parents frequently went out to Catalina, and there was a boat called, I think, the Caroline, that I don't know that he owned it, but they would all meet on this boat periodically too. But I don't know the details of that. Uh, and I do remember, and this was really kind of freaky because in later years, I bumped into Linda Brown, who is the daughter of T. Townsend Brown, and she mentioned going to the Salton Sea where they left her on the beach, and all the adults went into a meeting, and my parents took us to the Salton Sea. And I didn't understand why my dad was all dressed up in his work clothes and my mom was all gussied up, but they left us with my dad's mother, who was with us on the beach there, and we were playing with this girl who was a little bit older than I was, because Linda's I think 5 years older than I am, something like that. And when she mentioned that meeting out at the Salton Sea, this clicked in my memory. I went, "Oh my gosh, that must have been the same place. It must have been the same meeting." She and I both had memories of this
Wow.
meeting that we didn't get to go to, but we knew it was happening. So, yeah, it's kind of a wild ride on that score that we've had here in this universe.
Bit of an island of Dr. Moreau situation there, isn't it?
Somewhat, somewhat.
That's absolutely amazing. Did you know how big this setup, the laboratory was? Like, was it a big warehouse operation, big company, or was it more private?
I really am not absolutely certain because I never actually got to see the setup, although I've seen pictures of Brown with his disc and some video in a laboratory. I'll say it the way you do. And it didn't appear really huge. It's what I saw in the video suggested that their facility was, at most a 3-bedroom house sort of amount of space at the very
Wow.
most. It didn't seem very, very large. They didn't need a huge amount of space for their discs because you'd figure the discs are roughly 3 feet across each. That's 6 feet. The beam running across was about 10 feet. That's 16 feet. And then you had the things that held the discs up, and the cords that held them up. And I'd say that probably added another 4 to 8 feet, depending on how long they were. So, in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 feet wide is how wide you'd need for the apparatus that they were using to fly these discs. You some wiggle room, maybe 30 feet square, and
Wow.
maybe another 15 feet high, whole lot. And I'm pretty sure that the facility in France, the experiment in the vacuum was probably even smaller than that. I don't think they used full-size discs for that experiment. So, they just wanted to see what would happen, whether it would function in a vacuum. And like I said, it did even better. So it's obviously something that easily go out into space. Now, the big question is, have we been out into space? With the information that NASA feeds us, that's in doubt. Because a lot of it just doesn't make any kind of sense. But if we have, it's not through the rocketry that they've been trying to get us to believe is how they get there. And I also think that there is some probability that ET has put a barrier around our globe. Let me make that very clear. Globe.
Ah.
It ain't flat. That they put a barrier around the globe that we can't get through. Now, I don't know whether the electrogravitic craft could make it through that barrier or not, but I have to give that fairly high probability that there is such a thing. There's a mention in the Vedas of running into a barrier. No mention of a flat planet, by the way, just that they ran into a barrier up there. The fact that everything that looks to be real has come from low Earth orbit or below. NASA even admits that the globe that they show us is stitched together from pictures taken from, a lower position than way out in space where you could see the whole thing sitting there. So we know we don't seem to have any images of the entire planet, but they've got a lot of very large area images that they can stitch together that you would have to be in low Earth orbit to get. So I think that what has happened is that we've got this barrier around just above low Earth orbit, and we can put all the stuff up there in the low Earth orbit we want, but we can't get any further. Now, it's possible that it's just living things that can't get any further, which means we could send equipment out there. So maybe we really are getting images from the far side of the moon, from Mars, from Pluto, although I'm very suspicious of Pluto with that patch that you can practically draw Pluto right over. the dog, the Disney dog, that's just a little fishy. But
Go into that a bit more, please.
well, the image of Pluto that they keep giving us has lighter patch that if you took Pluto, the Disney dog, and drew it over the white patch, it fits almost perfectly.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm like, well,
Wow.
maybe that isn't what we're seeing. I do know that, the comet Philae, I think it was called. There's an image of it that when you take the island of Philae, which apparently has a temple to Isis upon it, you can overlay it over the model of this comet, and everything lines up. So I have, plus I have a friend that I occasionally manage to contact who says that he is aware that they produced that whole comet landing thing somewhere in Nevada. And he's been good on many things that information he's given me, and I have no reason to doubt that he is making that, that he's not telling the truth from what he knows, but I don't necessarily knows that it was done in Nevada. But it wouldn't surprise me any.
Wow. Do you think the Nevada do you think the Nevada experiments and all this stuff is a direct descendant of the work T. Townsend Brown might have been up to?
You mean the atomic weaponry?
I was thinking more
Is that
more
what we're
the black
talking
hole.
about?
I was thinking more the craft.
Oh, okay. All of the UFO activity.
Yeah.
Like I said, I give highest percentage to most of them being of human origin. Yes. However, I cannot rule out that occasionally we get in here as well. Expect that the ET stealth, they can zoom without it. Maybe, just guessing.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, Amaterasu, we might wrap that one up. And
All right.
thank you so much for being on the show again with that incredible, absolutely incredible story. I don't think even Coast to Coast has information like that. So thanks very much for being on the Charles Cost Show.
Oh.
And how can people find your YouTube?
YouTube, look up Amaterasu Solar. That's AMATERASU and SOLAR, like solar, only it's pronounced solar. And I've also got Amaterasu Solar again. Either one will work. Also, I might want to add that I do have a forum. It's called Tapurit, and it can be found at tapurit.boards.net. And that's TAPYOUREIT.boards.net.
Awesome, Tapurit. And you're also on Conspiracy or Not, Here We Come. Can you tell us the latest channel that we can find that show on?
Well, right now we're in a hiatus. So I'm not really sure exactly when we will be starting up. I know that I have almost all of the shows on my channel that we've done so far, with the exception of the one where we tore the Parkland shooting to pieces, and that's how I got my last strike on my main channel. I'm sitting at 2 strikes. And yeah, it was for bullying and harassing, like people sitting around discussing evidence is bullying and harassing.
Damn.
They're
What?
bullying and harassing me.
Well, there we go. Uh, well, thank you, Amaterasu, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, that was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I love that story about. Wow, I'm gonna look him up now. T Towns. I see. I never heard of this guy, T Townsend Brown. This is another Nikola Tesla. Hey.
Well, yes and no. He had a lot more military contacts.
Thomas Townsend Brown. Wow.
Yep, that's the man.
1905 to 1985.
Okay,
Oh
he
my.
died in the 80s. Yeah.
Wow. There's still claims. Reading it now. There's still claims that Brown discovered anti-gravity, a popular idea with the unidentified flying object community, and spawning many conspiracy theories. Oh, I bet so. Oh my god.
Well, I say that it's sporting many conspiracy analyses.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm
amazing.
not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Now, do you reckon we can talk about anything else for a possible third interview?
oh, good heavens. Let's see. I
Ha!
don't
You
know.
can if you want to. Oh, we've done like so much already. You know, what I mean, like wow.
Well, I'm certainly willing to discuss how free energy means we don't have to account for our own.
Yes,
And,
please.
and that is why they've hidden
Well, okay, let's
free
start. Let's
energy.
start. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I'll kick us off. All right. Okay. So, our next guest is Amy Amaterasu Solar, and of YouTube, of Conspiracy Not Here We Come. She has her own forum. What was that forum called again?
Tapyourit.boards.net.
Tapyourit.boards.net. Welcome, Amaterasu Solar, and thank you for being on the show again. You gave us an incredible interview last time about Thomas Townsend Brown, a brilliant American inventor of electrogravity and other ideas, and you've talked about psychopaths in control. Today, you're going to talk about something absolutely amazing. Would you like to kick it off?
Certainly. And thank you for having me. Basically, what I wanted to discuss today was the fact, as I mentioned in in one of the previous shows, that money accounts for human energy. Add free energy, you wind up with no need to account for human energy because it becomes like accounting for grains of sand, which is pretty pointless. And this is the reason that the psychopaths in control have avidly suppressed and hidden any free energy developments. In fact, there are a number of ways to draw the energy that we swim in. The whole universe is a pool of energy, but they don't want us to know that. And that's one reason why they put the Einstein character out with his theories and touted them as being awesomely true, because they don't predict if this energy available, things wouldn't cost anything because 100% of the cost of everything is energy. 100%. When you get down to the root of it, it's the energy, mainly human energy, that is the cost.
Wow.
So, yeah, they do not want us to know that we can free ourselves of our wage slavery, which presently they try to indoctrinate us into the slave's creed they call the work ethic to keep us slaving away off it. And if we if we just accept that, then we are destined to be slaves upon our planet, which, by the way, our planet belongs to everyone who was born on or within its soils. And the church way back, like somewhere, I think it was the 900s. I'm not really sure exactly of the date, but they were fully aware that this planet belonged to everyone. But they decided that they could set up a trust for everybody. And
Mm.
so they started up the Unum Sanctum Trust. And when that wasn't covering everything that they needed it to, they added the Sestui KV trusts as well. And basically, if we don't say that we are adults and ready to take on our share of our planet when we turn 18, we've got to do that, and then us dead. And this is where you get a lot of the, we're all dead type symbolism and lyrics and stuff like that. Or, you're dead. Don't worry, you're dead. you know?
Wow. And of course, the Beatles specialized in that in the late 60s, didn't they?
Yep. Yep. And it
Wow.
has not to do with the fact that we're dead per se, because we're not. I'm living. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure you are.
Hope
But
so.
because legally we are dead. So they now, since we're dead, they can take the planet and do with it as they will, because we've lost out on our share of what's going on here on our planet. Now, of course, if you get rid of money uh, by adding the free energy, you wind up with the ownership of land becoming not very important unless it's the land you're living on. I mean, consider if there's no money, what is the point in owning that apartment building across town? You're not going to collect any rent, you know?
Yeah.
Owning anything, what's the purpose of owning that, you know,
It,
40
it, it's
acres in the boondocks?
it's amazing how this is tied into Einstein and how they used him to set the agenda. And indeed they did.
Yes.
They pushed him so hard into the media as a
Well,
kind of mad. Yep.
yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think that he was the quote genius that they claimed he was. I think he was an actor that was cast in that role. Just so you
I,
know where I'm coming from on that.
well, they could be something to that, because some people say many of his equations they are derived from Maxwell's equations. They are derived from other physicists, and that it is stated that he presented many of his theories in simply a different. He sort of paraphrased them, didn't he?
Yes.
He sort of used their work in a way, presented it in a unique way, but it was kind of in a way already there, wasn't it?
Well, yes and no, because uh, I do know that a full half of Maxwell's equations were tossed down the drain with Heaviside and I forget the other guy's name, and through and sort of rings. And I think the visions that were given to that Einstein is said to have come up with were given to him to present as his theory, so that like I have this wacky, genius character going on about these things, and just like they build up the psyops in the media. They say, oh, it's true that Sandy Hook was attacked by this crazy guy who had zero motive to do what they're saying he did. you know this guy came up with the answers. Yeah, they're called theories, but they're really true. They're theories. Oh, speaking of that, there is a contender for a series of theories that explain better what we see. Dr. Paul A. Laviolette has come out with what he calls subquantum kinetics, where he took the chemical kinetics, and applied them downwards to the subatomic level, and discovered things like, he discovered that it predicted the Biefeld-Brown effect. Now, at first he was stunned because he'd never heard of the Biefeld-Brown effect or T. Townsend Brown.
To take us into that as well, please, the Biefeld-Brown effect.
Well, that's where you apply a high voltage across a dielectric with two electrodes, a negative and a positive at either end. And depending on the K value of your dielectric and its nonlinearity and the nonlinearity of your electrodes, you can get some extreme power out with very little power going in, creating a gravity bubble where everything wants to fall towards the positive plate, which as it falls in that direction, the plate moves in that direction, so it keeps falling, is basically how it works in there. At any rate, now I've forgotten where I was going with that. It's all your fault.
You're going on about Laviolette?
Oh, yes. He came up with subquantum kinetics, and like I said, he predicted the Biefeld-Brown effect, which is basically the foundation for electrogravitics. And he had never heard of T. Townsend Brown or any of that. And he was thinking that there was something wrong with his equations. And then he discovered T. Townsend Brown in the work, and he says, there's experimental proof of exactly what I'm saying should happen. So he felt better about the universe when he discovered that, no, he didn't make an error. He's got proof that that's what happens. It also, there are many other mysteries, and I can't think of any right offhand, but I do know that Laviolette has a list of mysteries that the Einsteinian perspective brings up that he has explanations for in SQK, subquantum kinetics, SQK. Anyway, so yeah, I have to give his stuff much higher probability of being correct than the Einsteinian hogwash. I know that SQK starts with an ether, which, they keep trying to tell us, no, there's no ether. But there is.
There must be.
Yes. Well, and in fact, they redid the Michelson-Morley experiment, which they used to prove that there was no ether back in the day, with much more sensitive equipment and, a greater degree of evaluation data, and discovered that, oh, actually, yeah, there is an ether, but they don't put that out on the nightly news.
They don't.
Because that would mean the Einstein stuff is wrong.
And this is amazing, because throughout the 20th century, physicists have always grappled with the problem that Einstein's theories, elegant as they are not and Einstein was aware of this, are not compatible, unless he was an actor, with quantum mechanics and quantum and now they're going on about this newer type of quantum mechanics, quantum field theory. Do you feel
Mhm.
that within the next few years, the Einstein physics is going to be exposed as a facade?
Well, that's a good question because, yeah, there are pockets of people who are realizing that Einstein's physics are, should be tossed out with the trash. But they keep indoctrinating the students in school that that's the be all and the end all. And they're certainly not telling people about the problems that are arising with the Einsteinian perspective. So, uh, within the next few years, only only if we can get rid of their control. And I do think that once awareness reaches the tipping point that we can create better on our planet and get rid of money, that it'll be about 10 years before it's fully implemented.
Yeah. Now we've recently had the unfortunate death of Stephen Hawking, and
Well,
I've always I've always thought myself that if they wanted to have an avatar pumping out propaganda, now this is going to sound bad, but if they ever wanted to have an avatar pumping out propaganda, they could a guy that doesn't move is perfect for that, right? I mean,
yes.
surely. Assuming totally genuine, and he did say a lot of strange things towards the end of his life. He mentioned aliens, he mentioned other sorts of things, but he was purely he was a mathematician. He was a clever mathematician, but I noticed he never ever went into electric universe. He never discussed plasma cosmology. He never discussed electric universe, despite his interest, his own interest in some alternate things, such as dystopian scenarios, such as aliens,
Yep.
of artificial intelligence. He never talked about electric universe, which would have overturned many of his theories. Could I ask your opinion on electric universe, plasma cosmology, Stephen Hawking?
Okay, well, as far as the electric universe and the plasma thing, I give that by leaps and bounds the highest probability. I think that the purely gravitational model absolutely does not explain what we see, and that the electric universe model does a marvelous job at doing so. And as far as Hawking is concerned, given that, let's see, he had ALS, right?
Yeah.
Given that approximately 90+% of people that are diagnosed with it last maybe 2 years, and there's been a few people that made it 5 years. I'm not buying that this one man just happened to survive, what, 50, 60, a lot of years. I'm not buying that. And in fact, if you look at pictures of Hawking uh, around the time that he was diagnosed and given, by the way, about 2 years to live, um, and images of what he wound up always looking like sitting in that chair that we saw him over and over and over again in, it looks to me that they're two different people.
Wow.
And I think what they did was they had this guy who was sympathetic because of his ALS and uh, noteworthy because of his intellect and what he did manage to bring forth while he was still with us. And they put a character on the stage, called that character Stephen Hawking, and wasn't it easy to do? The guy in the chair was in no condition to say, "Hey, no, wait a minute, I'm Joe Smith," or you know,
Wow.
and I don't think he would. I think the actor. I mean, who knows? Maybe that wasn't even a real person. It could have been a dummy. in that chair. How would we know? Right?
Well, we didn't.
He's
We
just sitting
certainly,
there.
bad as it sounds, we certainly didn't have much access to him. You do have a point.
Nope.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that, considering the fact that I have established that virtually everything that we are told is part of a play on this planet, trying to motivate us towards certain things, written probably by the ones above the psychopaths that we see that are in control on the planet. They could say, "Oh, look how fortuitous. Let's write this guy into our script and we can use him to tell people whatever we want." And they'll believe him,
All the world's a
right?
stage, and we're but the actors. Indeed. And something else I've just
Well, we're not,
yep.
hold on. Hold on. We're not the actors. Are the people playing out this play on the stage. We are the audience. And it
Oh.
is a participatory audience. So when they decide to feed us these ideas like, oh my God, he gassed his own people, we've got to go to war. Real people, willing and unwilling, will die. There will be bloodshed, because one thing these psychopaths seem to be really particularly fond of is sacrifice. And they get their willing sacrifices in the soldiers, or soul dyers, and they get their unwilling sacrifices in their collateral damage. So,
It's funny how nature exposes the true meaning of words by looking at the etymology of how these words are constructed. Soul die.
oh,
My God.
yep. I love etymology. I do.
And the army is indeed soul destroying, isn't it?
Yep.
For some.
For a great number.
Yeah.
They're very good at making secondary psychopaths out of people who might not otherwise have been secondary psychopaths through trauma, mind control, and severe indoctrination.
Yeah. Something that occurred to me, getting back to the Einstein Hawking thing,
Mhm.
we've had so the early part of the 20th century was dominated by Einstein, and this led to the Big Bang Theory, which is although that's not totally explained by relativity, now they call it I believe they call it expansion theory, because there was a sudden expansion and then relativity took over. But then they got into, but in the 80s, we started seeing Stephen Hawking. And Stephen Hawking is a kind of successor and sort of approver of what Einstein was supposed to have been saying, because the whole black hole thing, the Einstein-Rosen bridge, all this stuff, his Hawking's work was kind of a verification of Einstein, and therefore he was pushed. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the I think Einstein was an actor given a part. I think they took Hawking and gave whoever it was that took over when Hawking himself passed away, because I'm sure he didn't make it too many years past the diagnosis, 10 at the very most, and that's really pushing it, and used him to add some spice here and there, but mainly retain that perspective, so that nobody will say, hey, wait a minute, there's an ether here and we can draw on the ether all the energy that we could possibly use, and we don't need oil, and we don't need natural gas, and we don't need wind, and we don't need solar. I'm led to believe the manufacturing of the solar collectors is very, very filthy for our environment.
Oh.
Just so you know, solar is, it may not look bad when you're actually getting the energy, but when you're creating what it takes to get it, not pretty. Anyway, I think that they were both characters that were put on the stage.
Yeah. Now, I just find it absolutely amazing because, you know, a few years ago, they were telling us that now Nikola Tesla is extremely popular, but in the 80s and 90s, he was completely unknown, and
Yep.
he only came to the forefront because of the internet. And it's because of the internet that I suppose the people have found out about him, and suddenly he is extremely popular. I had
Yeah.
not heard.
By
I had
by the
not heard.
way,
Gone.
when I was in high school, which was back in about 19, no, it was junior high school. So it would have been in the 60s somewhere. They had a presentation at my junior high school where we all went into the auditorium and they did a presentation on Nikola Tesla and his work and had the Tesla coil thingy, and it was fascinating. And so I knew about Tesla, but then I didn't hear anything about him for decades. So I was a little more prepared, I suppose, than most to grasp Tesla and what he meant. So, but yeah,
Wow.
the net has really released awareness of him to the larger number of people
The,
on this planet.
the net is amazing. Without the net, we wouldn't know. We would never know about Electric Universe. We would never know. And I have see,
Absolutely love the net.
it's incredible. And but before you mentioned him in the previous interview, I must admit I had never heard of Thomas Townsend Brown, that the man your father worked with. Who talked about ionic drift, ionic wind, the Byfield-Brown effect, electrogravitics, electrohydrodynamics, ion propulsion lifters, unbelievable things. Who had this island laboratory? That was an unbelievable interview. Oh, that blew me away. And yes, then it became obviously became a bit of a secret, probably a state secret, and that was that for the next 60 years, and all the people who made it a secret are now gone.
Yep.
I mean, that is just absolutely incredible, and because it was suppressed, it did not enter the popular consciousness, and no one learned it. None of the physicists learned it. None of the engineers learned it.
True.
And hence we do not use this technology today because of that's unbelievable. Do you think that some of the work of Thomas Townsend Brown is going to come to the fore in the next few years, and people will start to pick up on him?
Well, I certainly am hoping so, but I do know that the psychopaths in control have a vested interest in making sure it doesn't happen. So we'll see. We will see. Let's hope that the universe rectifies positively in that regard.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, and thank you so much, Amy, for being on the show again, and I hope to talk to you again in future about so many more things. You're incredibly intelligent. I love to pick your brains. I'm sure the audience is enjoying themselves. And what was the name of your forum again?
Tapyourit.boards.net is the address, and that make sure you spell your correctly. It's Youre. Tap TAPYOUREIT .boards.net.
Amazing. Okay, thank you, Amaterasu, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
You do the same, Charles. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Wow, that was cool, eh?
Yeah, we're finding
Oh
all
my
kinds
god.
of fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I can't believe it. That was amazing. You know that's better than the rubbish on Coast to Coast. You know.
Well, I think so too, because to be very honest, I think that what winds up on that show has been vetted by people with interests.
Yeah,
You know, if
yeah.
you're going to talk about something they don't want talked about, you ain't going to get on the show.
I think you're right because I never listened to it very much. I only listened to it online because we didn't have it on the radio here. But it was just it was either crap or it was just weird nonsense. You know.
Yep, yep.
Right, it wasn't true stuff, you know. It was theories and but yeah, uh, you know.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I listened to Coast a while ago, and you know, I realized that really it's just talk. It's not discussing any solutions.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway,
Woohoo!
we can always do this again for you come up with more questions.
Okay, sure. We'll do
Yeah.
it again. We'll make another session. We'll
Yeah.
do it all again, and oh man, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll
And
probably disconnect it. And oh, you going?
yeah, I'm gonna bug out here.
Yeah.
So
Have a nice.
let me stop the broadcast. We don't